Hey everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petraglia back with the latest installment of the Jungle War podcast powered by Prize Picks here on the CLNS Media Network. Back with my good friend and I'd say part-time colleague, Richard Skinner, Skinny of Local 12 here in Cincinnati. Want to get right to it, Skinny, and talk about the owners' meetings which are taking place down in Palm Beach, Florida, the Breakers Resort down in Palm Beach. And on Monday, it was Zac Taylor and other NFL coaches speaking to their group of reporters that cover each respective team. And Zac Taylor telling a group of Cincinnati reporters, Ben Baby, Kelsey Conway, and Paul Dehner Jr., that, yes, we need to start better in September. Well, I think, Skinny, we all know that, right? We've been talking about that for the last several months. But what was interesting on Monday from Zac Taylor is that he actually gave, it sounded like, a commitment to guys playing in the preseason, and that's going to be a switch.
Yeah, and I think that's been intimated in a couple other conversations where he's been asked about, what can you do to start faster? And he's talked about turning over every stone to try to find that out. I don't even know if that's the answer, though, Mike. I mean,
right.
I think there's been a lot of, and I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but I think there's been a lot of mitigating factors in the slow starts. Let's take away the 2019 team, his first team, because that was just an awful team, and it didn't matter when it started, when it played, how it ended. It was just a bad team. And next year, you got a rookie quarterback in COVID, okay? 21, they did actually win their opener because that was a healthy Joe Burrow for a change, even though he was still coming off the knee surgery. Then you had appendectomy Joe Burrow, who didn't look right the first two games, played the worst game of his career in that opener against Pittsburgh when he threw 4 picks and fumbled once. Then you had this past offseason where you literally didn't know until 90 minutes before kickoff if Jamar Chase was going to play or if he wasn't going to play. So, again, I know people look at training camp and they think it's a country club atmosphere and it's not hard enough and it's not tough enough. And listen, you and I both grew up in the era, even as a child, going up to Wilmington and watching, a 2-hour practice of full live football. The NFLPA doesn't allow that anymore. I mean, can the Bengals maybe tackle a little more? Can they be a little more aggressive in camp? Sure they can. I think he's doing this more to appease the fan base than to really believe that playing guys a few snaps in the preseason is going to make any difference.
I don't think there's any question that one of the issues that the Bengals have had over many of those games that you mentioned, not Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow, by the way, this past year, on top of not knowing if Jamar Chase was going to play 90 minutes before the game, he was coming back from a wrist surgery that very few, really, if any NFL quarterback has ever come back from. And that took him a while to get comfortable and confident in his ability to throw the ball downfield. But it's the defense. And to me, the one thing that has really dropped off, and I've said this to you before, Skinny, on this very podcast, they have not tackled and they have not pursued the football the last 2 seasons the way they did in 21 and 22. They've got to get back to that. I don't care if it's Lou Anarumo back as the defensive coordinator those years of 21, 22, or Al Golden, who takes over the defense this year. They've got to learn to pursue. They've got to learn to wrap up. And I don't think thudding necessarily does them any good. When I hear that all the time in training camp, we were able to get some good thuds on out there in training camp practice. I kind of roll my eyes because a thud's great, but in a game, that's not going to necessarily get the ball carrier to the ground. And that's, to me, one of the things they've got to practice. And yes, the Steelers have done it better over the course of their last 5 decades. But they've been able to play good defense at the start of seasons under Mike Tomlin. That's one reason the Steelers often get off to good starts. The Ravens certainly do it. They play a physical brand of football. The Browns do it. They, for all of their weaknesses on offense, they play a very fundamentally sound brand of defense. Bengals have to be able to practice tackling and getting the ball carrier to the ground.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with adding some live tackling to practices. You maybe don't do it every day, but you have a live tackling period or two. I don't think that's a bad thing. But back to the original thing we were talking about with Zach about playing starters in the preseason. I'm meh on that. I mean, I don't think that it really does anything for anybody. Now, listen, if Joe Burrow wants to do it, feels like it's going to help him. Okay, I'm fine with that. But this feels like it's more of, okay, I'm going to appease the fan base who wants this. And I mean, heaven forbid, one of these times a key
I
guy gets
know.
hurt because he played a preseason snap. I want guys playing meaningful football. I don't need them playing preseason games.
I understand that. And in reading the quote directly from Zac Taylor on Monday morning, I see our guys playing more in the preseason this year than we have in the past. Does that mean maybe they play for a series or two
Right.
and then pull them right out of there? That's probably all that means. It's just to get them not only, I think, Skinny, physically ready, but mentally ready. To me, mental reps in preseason games for successful teams, they do matter.
Yeah, but you can take mental reps staying on the sideline too. But
To me, Skinny, if you're actually in the game and you're going through the motions and going through the procedure of getting into a game, playing the game, and coming out and communicating with the coaching staff, doing all of the little things, to me that adds up.
Yeah, I will say every Joe Burrow pass better be a quick pass or a screen. I mean, honestly, I'm not even gonna I'm not even gonna venture down the road of him standing there for a normal rep and try to rip it down the field and get hit. I'm not gonna risk that.
Well, I mean, I think we all remember the Miami Dolphins preseason game in 2021 when Jamar Chase famously was struggling with the yips in his rookie year, couldn't catch, a beach ball when it was thrown right to his chest. And that year, of course, he threw, I think, one to Tyler Boyd, one quick out to Jamar Chase, who dropped it. And that was it for Joe Burrow. And to your point, I don't know if that does anybody any good in that particular case.
No, I mean, I'm interested to see it. And listen, if to Zach's credit, I guess, he decides to say, look, okay, I think my way is the right way, but obviously I got to do something different. And maybe this is, again, maybe adding, to our point, some live tackling in training camp. Maybe letting the starting defense play 2 or 3 series to get a feel for live football. Not letting Joe Burrow maybe play 2 or 3 series, but just some of those guys, and maybe even some of the new guys, get the line together for a series or two to get them a little more cohesion. Good for him if he's going to do that. I don't think he believes in it, but if he feels like it's going to be something different to maybe help them, then so be it. But like I said, I forgot about the calf injury in 2023. There's another reason for that slow start. I mean, there really have been mitigating factors almost every single season.
That's our Skinny making excuses for
right,
for every reason the Bengals have faltered under Zac Taylor in the first month of the season.
Yes.
Go to Richard Skinner and he'll come up with an excuse.
I will tell you, I've used those negative numbers though against him. Like they just fell to 1-11 in his first 2 games of seasons combined. So I use the negative numbers too when I write.
It's rote in our memories. There's an expression we don't use often. Okay, the other issue that came up with Zac Taylor on Monday, and it's certainly understandable. The other major issue of the offseason to this point now with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins getting their extensions, Trey Hendrickson. Here's the quote. Trey's been a big part of our team. We want to work through it with him and his agent. We'll just see where it goes. And he added that it's been a patient communication process. I think it's pretty clear by now the Bengals have no interest in trading Trey Hendrickson because they haven't been blown away. If there's a team out there that's going to come forward and give them a first and a second and maybe a player, but certainly a first and a second, the Bengals would consider making the move. But at this point, I don't think the Bengals have any interest in trading a commodity that not only they want, at this point, they absolutely need to have to start the 2025 season.
And you know what? Right now, I don't think either side is wrong. I don't think the Bengals should have just given Trey Hendrickson away because he wants to be traded. That's not the thing to do. That's an ignorant thing to do. I don't blame Trey Hendrickson for wherever he's at in the asking price for probably asking it. You know, Max Crosby gets $35 million on average. Danielle Hunter signed for $35 million. If I'm Trey Hendrickson, I'm every bit as good, if not better than those guys. I don't think that the Bengals can get to the $35 million number. So where's the settling ground? This feels like the T. Higgins situation of, if it's too low, Trey's not going to sign. If it's too high, the Bengals aren't going to pay that. So where's that sweet spot to get an extension done? And honestly, at the end of the day, if they can't, and again, I don't think either side is wrong in this at all. I don't blame Trey for asking what he's asking. I just don't know if he's going to get the $35 million, if that's the asking price. Here's when blame can be assigned. if at the end of the day they can't decide on an extension, and then he decides to pout about it, no, man, you signed this extension 2 years ago. No one put a gun to your head. Sorry the market went to where the market was. We tried to come to a number we thought was fair. And again, maybe they do. I think everybody hopes that they do. But in this process at the moment, hard to point a finger at either side. The finger pointing can be done of, hey, we couldn't get anything done. You're under contract for this year. You can be a free agent after this year. And if it's him, and I've heard this, well, he's considering sitting out games. Okay, sit out some games, and then let's see if somebody's going to pay you top dollar as a free agent next year if you don't perform when you're 31 years old. And those years of your contract in free agency are years 31, 32, 33, or 32, 33, 34. Who's going to sign you for big money if you didn't produce in 2025? I think he would play. He will have to play. I think he'll play to the best of his ability, and then maybe the end of the Trey Hendrickson era comes in Cincinnati. But again, right now, I can't point a finger at either side.
Yeah, and I don't think, Skinny, that he has any intention of sitting out. I
don't
think he has too much passion. I think he definitely feels, certainly now with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase extended through at least the 2028 season, that he has a chance in Cincinnati to win that Super Bowl ring. I think it's a realistic shot. He knows that he can be a big part of that formula, certainly on the defense, if he sticks around and plays. And I think he likes the culture in Cincinnati. He likes where he is. It's a comfortable situation for him and his family. So I think it's just a matter of waiting and seeing how the whole process plays out, like Zac Taylor said on Monday morning. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, and listen, I get where the market is, right? But just because the Raiders are dumb, just because the Browns are dumb, just because the Texans who signed an just because they're dumb doesn't mean you have to be dumb too. That positional market is way out of whack in my opinion. I get again why Trey wants whatever he wants, but it's just so far out of whack that I just don't know. I don't know where we land on this.
By the way, enough of the Trey Hendrickson talk. I want to go back to some of the details that have come out on the T. Higgins contract and whether or not you think that Rocky Arsenault played it straight with T. Higgins in terms of negotiating his deal at the same time he was working Jamar Chase's contract. Now that we find out that maybe T. Higgins doesn't have all the protections in the world that we initially thought he did, how do you think that works out over the lifetime of the contract, if indeed T. Higgins plays all 4 years with the Bengals?
I think that's them conceding, and maybe that came up in the negotiation process of, look, this guy's too hurt for us to give a ton of guaranteed money to. We're going to give you some good guaranteed money, and it's going to give him enough protection. But listen, man, with your injury history, I just don't know. And I think, I'm just surmising here, that he wanted to be here badly. I do. I don't think he took a discount. I think he got a fair price. I think he thinks it's a fair price. If he's able to play, he's going to get paid the life of that contract. So I think it's a little concession of, yeah, I get it, I've been hurt. And the Bengals going, hey, we can't give the guarantees maybe you think you're going to get because of your injury history. And so if you're healthy and you play out this contract, well, then you're going to get paid the money from the contract anyway.
Do you think that T. Higgins will be more likely to play through an injury, a bump or a bruise, given that fact?
I think he always has, Mike. I mean, you go back to that Kansas City game in 23 where, remember, he came out in the first half due to a hamstring injury. It was cold as all daylight. I mean, it was so freaking cold that day. Not as cold as the playoff game, but it was darn cold that day. I mean, it would have been easy for him to go to the fetal position and go, my hamstring's hurt. It's the last game. I know we're trying to get to the playoffs. No, he dragged himself back on the field in the second half. So, yeah, I think it's a guy with an injury history, and maybe he's got all that behind him, and he'll never get hurt again. That's probably not realistic. But no, I think he always is. He's been nothing but a pro, in my opinion. I know people thought last year, early in the year, he's jaking it, and he was really hurt by that. I think he was surprised people thought that of him. He was legit hurt. Unfortunately, that's part of his MO, is he's legitimately hurt a bunch.
And certainly I'm not intimating that he is not playing tough and not played through injuries or bumps and bruises in the past. I'm just curious with the way the contract is structured, if there's additional motivation for him to prove to the organization, prove to everybody that he signed this contract, he's going to play to the terms of the contract. That's my only point.
I think that's the case. I do.
All right, we haven't talked really at all, Skinny, about the NFL draft, and it's coming up at the end of April, the 24th, 25th, and 26th in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I think everybody knows the Bengals are picking in the first round, number 17 overall. Do you think it's a foregone conclusion they are picking defensive line at that spot, whether it's an edge or a nose tackle, or could they go outside the box and stick with that mentality that is so popular, and that is the best player on the board?
Yeah, I think it's best player on the board, but I think there's such a dearth of talent across the defensive line that, your board's going to talk to you of probably a defensive lineman being in that spot at 17. I saw a mock draft. In fact, I did a mock draft today. I'm going to write about it. I'm doing 3 this week. I'm doing one where I just take the 6 picks as they are. I'm doing another one, and I'm using a simulator from NFL Draft Buzz, and it's pretty good. It uses the Jimmy Johnson trade chart if trades are made.
Yep.
So I got offered a bunch of trades as I was going through this. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do another one where I accept a bunch of these trades and see what I can do with the plethora of picks I get from that. And then I'm going to do one on Friday, Mike, where I trade Trey Hendrickson and see what I get back for that. I got to get the value I want, so maybe I don't trade Trey. I want to see what that looks like if I do trade Trey and if somebody accepts the value I'm seeking.
And what is that value?
It has to be a first and probably a second, maybe in a future year, and maybe even a player back, a veteran defensive end back from that team that I can at least plug and play. He's not going to be Trey Hendrickson, but at least he's a starting caliber player.
Yeah, to me, that's the key to that deal. If you're going to make a deal with for Trey Hendrickson, not only do you have to get 2 picks, you have to get a serviceable. That is a good term, good way to put it. You've got to get a serviceable defensive edge who can play 90% of the pass rushing downs. No question. He has to be able to do that. Certainly, if you get something like that back in return and you can maybe get another first round this year, I think there is some consideration to that. Certainly the Bengals, if they got another player, I think it'd even have to be better than a Joseph Osai. It'd have to be someone who can not only pass rush, but perhaps set the edge a little bit.
Yeah.
A two-way defensive edge, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, there's Sam Hubbard's floating around out there. Somebody like a consistently solid guy who he isn't dynamic rushing the passer, but you look up at the end of the year, he's going to get you 8.5 sacks, and to your point, he's going to play good run defense. And I'm going to draft one probably as well, and hopefully that guy can maybe add to the pass rush mix. Maybe that's the guy's specialty that I draft. You're seeing a lot of undersized edges talked about in this draft, right? 245-pounders, 255-pounders who can all run. Well, can they play on first down? Maybe not, but maybe they're just so athletic at bending off the edge that that's my guy. I'm just going to take him, and he's going to be my pass rush specialist.
When I hear that, Skinny, I know a lot of Bengal fans are going to cringe and go, we don't need another Myles Murphy. We need someone with a little bit more stout, somebody who's got a high motor. And I think, Myles Murphy may come on in his 3rd year this year in 2025 and really prove to be a solid contributor along the defensive line. The Bengals are like almost at this point, Skinny, they're depending on it.
Yeah. I think the perfect scenario is either something gets done with Trey plays out this contract, you draft an edge to play behind Trey, and then the other defensive end spot is a rotation of Myles Murphy and Joseph Osai, hopefully pushing each other. That's, I think, the best case scenario you got.
All right, I'm going to go over some of those names, and in the first 2 I'm going to mention are precisely the kind of characteristics you were talking about. A little undersized but quick. Abdul Carter out of Penn State, 259 pounds, 6'3".
He'll be gone.
He'll be gone, yes. James Pierce Jr., he's going to probably be gone, right, at 243 pounds?
Yeah, he was on the board, and I took a different defensive end before instead of Pierce. But, yeah, I think Pierce will probably be gone too.
Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M. By the way, Texas A&M has 2, at least at the in the player rankings of edge rushers that I'm looking at right here, they have 2 of the top 5 in Shamar Stewart and Nick Scourton. Have you looked at those 2 at all?
I have not. I saw them play in college, but I haven't done a deep dive into those guys. The guy, it's weird. I've done some mock drafts on my own just because I haven't written them and do it for different simulators. Some simulators I really like, some I don't. Some are just silly the way they're done. And it's like, that guy's not going to be available, so I can't take this seriously. But I always land on Mike Williams from Georgia. I mean, it feels like every time he's right there, edge rush guy, best player on the board.
Georgia.
Yep, Georgia.
And Bengals have had success with guys from Georgia, and certainly Amarius Mims had a terrific rookie year. He looked, even though he didn't play a lot at Georgia, he was not overwhelmed when he got on the field with the Bengals. That, to me, I'm going to go off on a divergent path here. That is something I don't think we talked enough about this past season, is how Amarius Mims, after I believe it was just 8 starts at Georgia, came into the NFL and did not look overwhelmed. Who do you credit that to? Amarius himself?
I mean, I guess you got to give some credit to Frank Pollock. It's probably hard for Bengals fans to do that when he drew a lot of ire for the offensive line's overall performance and he got fired. But I think, Amarius, I think, deserves a lot of that credit. I think his factor was just literally they were banking on, can he be healthy? Because when he was healthy for those 8 games on tape, they were dynamic. And so all you're banking on there is, can this guy be healthy? I mean, let's not forget Anthony Munoz coming out of USC had knee issues. And that was the big question mark of, this guy's really, really good, but is he going to be healthy? Well, by God, if he wasn't, he was as durable as they come in the NFL. So, you hope Amarius goes down that path too. And, it's funny. I thought he had a really good rookie year. I know some grading services didn't put him way up on the list, but how often did you notice him in a negative way, Mike? Not very often.
No, you didn't. And that is the best possible scenario for a rookie player in the NFL, especially a rookie first-round player. He didn't get embarrassed.
No.
And you want a guy out there who can take on the very best edge rushers in the National Football League. And I thought he did that. I mean, I thought the first time he went up against the Chiefs and what they're able to bring to the table, and same with the Ravens, he was able to hold his own. I mean, he had his struggles, of course, but I think for the most part, he was able to really hold his own. Here's 2 names I want to give you, and they're both Ohio State Buckeyes from the national champions, Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimalu. I think both of them are fascinating for different reasons.
I do too, and Sawyer on a few drafts has fallen to the 4th and 5th rounds, and it's been to a spot where I've already taken that position group. But if I hadn't, he's one of those guys. He just makes plays, and I know
I love that.
The measurables aren't there, right? And he's a little too small, but the guy makes plays, and I think sometimes we overthink this stuff. I mean, who was the kid? I'm drawing a total blank. The UC kid that played for the Vikings. Pace.
Ivan Pace. Ivan Pace Jr.
I mean, on tape, he was dynamic. And teams went, nah, he doesn't have measurables. What did he end up doing? He proved that tape was pretty damn good by what he did as a rookie.
And I think Bengal fans would much rather have playmakers and guys who just show up in the right place at the right. That's what Sam Hubbard was early in his career, Skinny. And you covered him, obviously, his entire Bengal career. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Early on in 18 and 19 and 20, when the teams weren't very good, he was always making plays, putting himself in the right place at the right time. And ironically and appropriately enough, we're talking Ohio State. What was Sam Hubbard? Ohio State.
Right.
But there is something about playing in big games and winning programs that, and Zac Taylor has mentioned this many times, Skinny, that those intangibles do matter at the next level if the player is smart enough to put himself in positions to make plays at the NFL level.
Yeah, I mean, and it feels like this guy just does that, and I guarantee you, he probably doesn't go until the 3rd or 4th round, and whoever gets him is going to wind up being very happy because they got a good football player for a long time.
I'm a little surprised Tuimalu is as low ranked as he is, and maybe
I thought he was better last year or whatever 2 seasons ago than he was this past season, and maybe that's why.